the systematic murder of women committed by the boy-next-door killer, Michael Gargiulo. The violent murder of Ashley Alarin in February 2001 is one of the most horrifying murder cases in Hollywood history, and it continues to captivate and horrify audiences to this day. Ashley, who was then a student of fashion design, was a lively, youthful, and lovely woman. Her friendship with the aspiring Hollywood actor, Ashton Kutcher, and her outgoing social life gave the impression that her life was full of potential. But on that fateful night, it all came crashing down. As Ashley got ready for her meeting with Kutcher, she was brutally killed in her house. She was stabbed 47 times. The case quickly became a media darling, thanks to both the horrific nature of the murder and the participation of Ashton Kutcher, a rising star at the time thanks to his role in the smash TV series That 70s Show. Since Kutcher was the last person to speak with Ashley before she passed away, he was initially considered a crucial witness. He was included in the tragic storyline for a long time, although he was never blamed for it. More than 2 decades after Michael Gargiulo, the notorious killer next door, was sentenced to death, it looked like justice had been served. However, a string of shocking new revelations surfaced. Unreleased testimony, new information from long-dead witnesses, and discrepancies in Kutcher's own story have transformed him from an eyewitness to a suspect. So, what transpired that evening? Today's video is going to be all about the details. A murder case shook the entire Hollywood neighborhood on February 21, 2001, in Los Angeles. Tragically, Ashley Alarin was one of the victims. Ashley Alarin was a 22-year-old fashion design student from Los Angeles who was killed. She had many friends and acquaintances, which contributed to her vivacious personality and beautiful appearance. She was friends with many famous people, including the young actor Ashton Kutcher, and she was a regular at parties and gatherings. When they were together, Ashley's romantic life was said to have reached a turning point. It was unimaginable that her gruesome murder would occur on the same night that they had arranged to meet alone. Both the investigation agency's findings and Ashton Kutcher's first testimony point to their intention to go out that night. At 8:24 p.m., Ashton gave Ashley a call to let her know he would be running behind schedule. Ashley gently said that she needed a little time to get ready since she had just gotten out of the shower. Nobody ever heard her speak again after that. It was almost 3 hours before Kutcher made it to her residence at about 10:45 p.m. He knocked on the door and noticed that the lights were still turned on, but nobody replied. According to Kutcher, who peered out the window, he noticed what looked like red wine on the carpet. He departed as soon as he thought Ashley had gone out with her pals. Ashley was found dead in her bedroom the following morning by her roommate. Police said the savagery was symptomatic of deep-seated fury. She was stabbed 47 times, with numerous wounds concentrated on her neck, chest, and back. A public outcry ensued as a result of the occurrence. In the middle of Los Angeles, a murder was planned. The case dominated American media for weeks due to a number of variables, one of which being the victim's status as an aspiring young woman with ties to an upcoming celebrity. But there were no indications of forced entry, which made the matter even more perplexing. There was no break-in at the front entrance. The living room did not appear to be the scene of a fight. The assailant was either familiar with Ashley or had figured out how to sneak in undetected, the latter of which was almost eliminated given the circumstances. Within days, numerous individuals associated with Ashley were questioned by the authorities, with Ashton Kutcher being one of the main targets. To be fair, his first claims were taken at face value. He was not in the victim's residence when the murder occurred, according to the available evidence. He quickly acknowledged that his fingerprints were on the doorknob and explained that he had touched it while pounding and attempting to turn the handle to enter. The absence of any tangible proof led to Kutcher's swift exclusion from consideration as a potential suspect. But discrepancies started to show up in his story. What gives an American adult the idea that blood is like red wine? Also, why didn't he report it, check in, or do anything else afterwards? What kind of relationship would it take for someone to visit their partner's house, notice some strange stains on the carpet, and then just walk away when no one opened the door? This conduct appeared implausibly apathetic, even if it wasn't based on prior knowledge of the events. Although these inquiries ignited public curiosity, they did not provide enough evidence to warrant indictment at that moment. The news broke the hearts of Ashley's loved ones. Tragically, Ashley's death left them wondering who could have been so cruel on top of losing a loved one. Ashley was known for her pleasant demeanor and optimistic outlook on life, while she was a student and employee in Los Angeles. A handful of men had shown romantic interest in her, but they were all safe to ignore. Because of this, authorities suspected that the killer had a strong obsession or personal motive because her murder was so planned, systematic, and brutal. The case remained unresolved even after months of inquiry. We did not find a murder weapon, only one set of DNA matches. If the records at the time are to be believed, all of Ashley's love partners had alibis. It seems like we had reached a dead end. In the United States, Ashley's case file was kept alongside thousands of others whose murders remain unsolved since the case was deemed unsolved. But destiny has a way of revealing everything in due course. A woman in California narrowly escaped being murdered in her apartment by an invader in 2008, a full 7 years later, and completely separate event. Michael Gargiulo, whose identity had eluded them before, was finally brought to light as a result of this occurrence. The case involving Ashley Ellerin was promptly reopened upon the discovery of this name. Nevertheless, this in no way meant that every question had an answer. As Ashton Kutcher pointed out, it did the exact opposite and sowed even more seeds of doubt. Who fled the site that fateful night were fully ignorant. The murderer next door, Michael Gargiulo, is facing the death penalty. Unexpectedly, the case of Ashley Ellerin reached a turning point in 2008, precisely 7 years following her murder. In El Monte, California, a guy brandished a knife in an assault on a woman who was within inches from death in her apartment. The thief sneaked into her house and stabbed the victim several times. Thankfully, she fought back and survived. The victim's neighbor, Michael Thomas Gargiulo, was identified as the assailant when police used DNA evidence they had gathered from this event to trace it back to him. As investigators delved further into his files, they discovered a string of horrific crimes and inadvertently revived the old case of Ashley Ellerin. When Ashley was murdered, Michael Gargiulo was a nearby resident. During Gargiulo's presence, the police promptly reviewed all open cases in the vicinity. By following this pattern, they were able to identify at least 3 separate killings. There were no indications of forced entry, but the young women who died had been stabbed several times. Not only was Ashley Ellerin's murder particularly heinous, but the victim also had connections to the entertainment industry, making it stand out among the others. The authorities discovered that Gargiulo had resided within a few houses of Ashley and had social interactions with her after they traced his whereabouts and movements. Several of Ashley's acquaintances attested afterwards that Michael had made an unsuccessful attempt to approach and pursue her. When Ashley saw Gargiulo showing up at her house for no apparent reason, one of her friends said she felt monitored and afraid. In 2011, Gargiulo was formally charged with Ashley's murder by the police based on circumstantial evidence and a matching pattern of the acts. He was simultaneously facing charges in 2 separate cases involving several stabbings, one in Illinois in 1993 and another in California in 2005. The new evidence revealed a serial killer who was well planned, remained silent, and exhibited extraordinary brutality. The boy next door killer, or the Hollywood Ripper, was how the prosecution referred to Gargiulo, because he always seemed to be just a regular guy while he was around his victims. Rapidly escalating to a high-profile trial, the case captured the attention of Americans across the country. Among the many prominent witnesses summoned to testify in the 2019 trial held in Los Angeles was Ashton Kutcher. Having become a huge star by this point, Kutcher testified as a witness. He restated his prior statements, saying that he had gone to Ashley's house on the night in issue, knocked on the door, and noticed a bloodstain on the carpet, but had received no response. "I thought she wasn't at home, though." In addition, he acknowledged that hearing about her murder made him anxious, since he was afraid that someone may find his fingerprints on the door handle. His testimony was not severely challenged at the time due to the lack of other tangible evidence that could implicate him. After over a decade of inquiry and litigation, Michael Gargiulo's trial finally ended in July 2021 with a death sentence. It was proven that a serial killer preyed upon the victims, Ashley Ellerin included. The feeling of closure, however, did not persist long after the sentencing. There were some voices of alarm from the defense team, investigative journalists, and legal experts. They claimed that there was no concrete DNA evidence in Ashley's case, and that Gargiulo's conviction was based on patterns and speculative links. The crime scene did not include any blood from Gargiulo. He did not leave any fingerprints. No eyewitness on the night of the murder said they saw him in the area around Ashley's house. At the same time, Ashton Kutcher was the last person identified as having physically touched the door handle, called the victim, and intended to see her later that night. Some members of the press and independent legal organizations started to wonder if the police had jumped the gun by putting the investigation on a convenient suspect and closed it too soon, disregarding elements that may implicate a famous person. Just to put the case to rest and satisfy the public, was Michael Gargiulo's death sentence really necessary? More significantly, who else could it have been than Gargiulo? All eyes were back on Ashton Kutcher in 2024, when new information surfaced during Gargiulo's appeal proceedings and cast Kutcher in a different light, not as a witness, but as someone who could be implicated. These questions were still unsolved during the sentencing, but now they are. From witness to suspect, Ashton Kutcher's unfortunate bystander in the Ashley Ellerin case. Kutcher, a young promising actor, was unwittingly entangled in a horrific tragedy at the height of his career. He remained a bystander for almost 20 years, playing the part of the boyfriend who was tardy to a date and, inadvertently, the last person the victim interacted with. Things started to change, though, when the defense attorney for Michael Gargiulo sought to overturn his death sentence by introducing fresh evidence that questioned Kutcher's involvement on that tragic night. Unexpectedly, Kutcher is now suspected of having a direct hand in Ashley's death, as what appeared to be a simple coincidence started to be reframed in a sinister light. There was something forceful and ethereal that sowed the seeds of doubt, rather than plain physical evidence. The contradictory character of his actions. In 2001, Kutcher stated in court that he visited Ashley's residence at 10:45 p.m., knocked on the door, and upon entering, discovered a red wine spill on the carpet and the lights turned on. However, he was unable to gain access to the house and consequently presumed that she had left. This tale seems plausible at first glance.